guys, so if you know me, I talk about belay devices a lot. Used a lot of belay devices in my life, and I like to play around with a lot of different things. And in the past, I've been able to borrow devices from other people, and actually people have given me different devices. As you'll see, this table I have right here, I've obtained a lot throughout the years. I've talked a little bit about different ATC type models here and there, but I use them so much in my life and in my line of work that I feel like I should really give them their own video where I talk about specific tube style belay devices. And so an example of that would be like this right here, just your standard model ATC, moving into guide style ATCs. And a little bit of wacky ones I have here, like this thing. And another example of kind of an older model right there. And I wanted to talk mostly about those specific devices. And, in the end, you may be like, well, what's the difference between a Black Diamond ATC and a Petzl Reverso? And in reality, there's not a huge amount of difference, but there's very minute differences in there that may be worth talking about. And another thing that I've kind of taken a specific interest in is cataloging wear of equipment. And so I'll buy a specific device, like maybe this Wild Country version of their ATC, and I just want to see how long it takes me to wear them out. So I've done this with Black Diamond ATCs. I have a number of retired newer models of BD ATCs right here, and some retired models of older devices, and I use them to I want to see about how much repelling it takes for the ATC to become worn in to the state that I like it to be. And I have a number of examples here. This one's made by DMM. This is the DMM Pivot. It's actually a really nice device. And if you look at the channels there, it would be nice to have a brand new one, which of course I don't really have a brand new device on here to show. Here you go, this one. This one's pretty new. So this is a Black Diamond. Maybe I'll actually switch to BD ones. So this is a Black Diamond ATC XP. It doesn't have the guide ring on it. And you can see right here roughly the new channels of teeth. Now what I like to do is break in my devices so that way I get them and I do like 20 to 40, who knows, rappels on that device with different types of rope. And I get them so that way they look more channeled out like that. So you can see new on the left versus old on the right. And this one has quite a bit of the teeth, and the channels have been worn away quite a bit. And what that does is it actually minimizes friction without losing the properties of the device. So the teeth on the device don't actually affect any braking ability when in belay from above mode. It'll affect braking ability when you're belaying from below, like a standard lead belay. But since I mostly guide, and if I'm doing like a belay from below, I may be using a different device like a Gree or a Gigajoule or whatever. But when I belay from above, especially since I mostly work in alpine terrain, I enjoy having that lesser friction. And this is a bit of an extreme example. This has been worn through quite a bit. I don't really need them to be that worn through. Going back to my DMM right here, you can see that amount of wear right there, how the sides billow out a bit. That is kind of the wear I'm looking for in terms of the device being broken in. And then what I can do is when I'm working in rock terrain, I often will have, at least one guide style device, but it's not uncommon for me to have two ATCs for a number of reasons. One is the clients will often drop their belay devices, and so I can give them my extra. And then two is it allows me to do some cooler transitions in whatever setting I'm in. And keep in mind, this is rock terrain. So if I'm out in the mountains guiding something like the Thunderbolt to Sill Traverse, I only have one ATC with me. And that's going to be a guide style ATC. Most of the time when we're short roping, short pitching, we use Munter hitches while alpine guiding. So you kind of already have two devices with you. But in multi-pitch rock terrain, single pitch rock terrain, it's nice to have two ATCs just for different transitions. You know, if you're doing a blade rappel, you can use this in your fixed line that's tied off while you use your ATC to belay them. You have your ATC belaying from above. You can use this for rappelling. You know, there's a lot of options there. And since it's rock terrain, we don't really walk that far. So having like two ATCs is not really a big deal. And they're so versatile, they're nice to have. What I do oftentimes is since I have two ATCs with me, I'll have one that's kind of like fully broken in that I like using for belaying, and then I may be breaking in another ATC, like this camp one. You can see how this one's billowed out now, so I could carry this to break it in a bit more, and then I have this one for frictionless top rope belay. And again, you know, in the recreational world, maybe this doesn't matter that much. But in guiding, we have a lot of problems. Old guides have a lot of problems with their elbows pulling rope through. And so if you have to use one of these things, it's nice to focus more in depth on these sort of things. After I have my broken in one, I can save wear on that ATC by bringing out one of these really cheap models right here and then rappelling on this. Now the way these things are designed, and I have a few different ones to show you, is these will wear out quite a bit faster than a more modern style guide mode device. And that's usually based on the shape of the material. So like this thing being shaped like a cone, these edges are going to wear out faster than a guide style device. I don't really care if I wear through this faster because it is cheaper, and I already have too many of these anyway. Basically what I've been doing is going to places like Play It Again Sports, and I can literally buy a number of these ATCs for like $4 a piece, maybe even $2, and that's not even counting the other ones that I've just been given to or found out there in the mountains. So at the moment I have 5 of these things. And these are usually ones that I'll give to clients too. I keep a few of them in my car if they need something, you know, just to rappel down. I really don't care if these things get worn out super fast. And another thing I'm interested in doing is roughly tracking how many rappels it takes to wear out one of these devices. So it's a little bit of an experiment I got going on right now. The next step up would be the XPs. And I happen to have 3 of these because I just do. Petzl makes one called the Verso, which is essentially the same design, only looking more like a Petzl Reverso. The only difference here is you have the teeth. And so these ones, barely used. Again, like bought at secondhand gear shops. You kind of look at them. Main points of wear that I look for. Basically, if I'm buying from a secondhand shop, I'm looking at like the coloring, the anodization here, seeing how many scratches it has. And then I'm looking at the teeth, and then the final thing is right here. Because if you load this up according to the pictures for rappelling or lowering, the majority of the wear is going to happen right here. And I have a better example of that really with the DMM, dude. You can see how the top of this part has been eaten into, and there's actually a fairly sharp edge right there, and that is from the rope running through. So I look right here for that sharp edge, and if there's no sharp edge and then there's barely any teeth wear, it's basically a new device. So that's the nice part about belay devices, is they're pretty simple to check for wear and stuff compared to something like a cam. These are just like, again, top roping, belaying. They get used all the same situations as the usual tube styles, and there's just other options out there. One thing that I also do sometimes is, since again with beginner rappellers, the teeth can be a little bit extra grippy. I may do a few rappels on these things, like bring them out as my main rappelling ATC and rappel on them like 30 to 50 times, wear down those teeth, and then it gives a smoother ride down for the client, especially if they're doing something like using a third hand for the first time in their life. That's most of the stuff I want to note with ATCs. Let's change the camera to table view so I can talk about each one of these individually now. Other things I wanted to talk about real fast are things like the megajoule, the gigajoule. I'm not going to talk about these in the video, but they are, in some circumstances, ATC style devices, especially with the gigajoule in that, the usual manual mode. That's totally an ATC style device, but since it comes with extra stuff, I'm not going to talk about it. Megajoule is a little bit less. You have things like the Mammoth Smart right here, which kind of fits that same bill. So I'm not going to talk about those at all. Throw those away. I'm also not going to talk about plates like this. This is actually the Gravel Scream, but sort of GG style plates. That's a topic for a different video. Just sticking with your standard ATC designs. And along with that, let's just talk real fast about carabiner pairings with the ATC. So if you're going to use your device right here just to belay in the gym, and you have one of these things, in truth, it really doesn't matter what carabiner you pair it with, but I would urge you to stay away from these D-shape sort of carabiners. Here are a few others. This is like made by Trango. You see how it has that fine point right there? This is an older style made by BD, but they're all still made that same way with that point. And what'll happen is if this is clipped here and then it's on belay, is instead of the rope being focused around the big, let's call it the basket of the carabiner, you get a focus point like this, the corner of the carabiner stuck up against your ATC. Now that can be annoying in some circumstances. In other circumstances, it may not matter. It's not life-threatening by any means, but what that does is it does create a large pinch point right here with the rope running through your device. And if you're at the gym with those fatter semi-static ropes, it can add a lot of friction. So if you're belaying like your child or something, it can be really hard to lower them down. Just that extra, if I can show you right there, just that extra pinch point can be really annoying on fatter ropes. If you use thinner ropes, then it's not as big of a deal. But another thing that can happen is it can cause uneven wear on your rope and even wear out your rope faster over the lifespan of the rope if you use these sort of pointed carabiners with your ATC. So like good carabiners to use are any sort of pair HMS style carabiners right here. This one's an I-beam construction because it has a lot of metal carved out. These things are totally fine to use with ATCs, and they don't create that pinching point right here when the plate gets pushed up against the carabiner, but they wear out a lot faster. I don't know if you can see that in the camera as much, but there is some wear right there happening on this carabiner. It's not to the point where I'm going to retire this yet, but that is definitely something that'll happen with the I-beams, as they just won't last as long. Solve for that is you get yourself a pear-shaped round stock carabiner like this. These things just take forever to wear out. So that is one of the best devices you can use with these plate style devices. Here's another one that's made by Saleva. This is completely round stock, so that's pretty cool. It's a little bit harder to get in the US. Basically every company on the market that makes carabiners will have some sort of belay style carabiner. This is an example of one by Black Diamond. You'll notice how the top of it right here where the rope goes is very round stock. And then you have the little capture point right there. So this is a great pairing. I think even these are sold in sets where you get the carabiner and the ATC together. But yeah, that avoids the pumping up. It avoids a little bit of cross-loading action, which can happen a lot with these devices. This is like probably the most recommended carabiner to use. Anyone who's familiar with a guide style device, which I'm not going to go into how this actually works anyway, you need two carabiners to use it when belaying from above. And I have the same setup that I think everyone else has. I wouldn't hesitate to grab one of these little D carabiners here and use that as the connection point of the eye to the anchor. And then I have, in this case, this large Gravel locker is like perfectly round stock right here. And it even has this little flat section on the nose to keep it from rotating, you know, every now and again when the rope is like hugging the nose of the carabiner like that. So the round stock is supposed to, or sorry, that flat nose part is supposed to help keep the round stock in contact with the plate. So that's how it stays on my harness. It's ready to go. It doesn't matter as much or at all really about this carabiner with the eye, but you got to get that nice round stock right here for feeding the rope through. It's so much more energy efficient. All right, so now let's talk belay devices. I got quite a bit. Now, I've had some of these ATCs for roughly my entire climbing career, so about 20 years, and then I've had others that I bought like last week. And then a number of these have been given to me or I've found outside or something like that. So let's just start with talking about, I already talked about kind of the basic ones, you know, like this, that I buy at used gear stores for super cheap, like even $2 a piece. And I got like 5 of them right now. Just somehow wound up with 5 of them. These are basically top roping, rappelling, and then that's kind of it. You know, they're great because they're cheap and they may not last as long as other models, but you don't, like if you're beginning to climb, then it's gonna be a while before you wear through these things, really. If you're getting into something like canyoneering, these can work, but then that's when they wear out super fast, is anytime you have like dirt and grit on your rope. The XP is one extra step. You may consider getting this if you're belaying someone heavier than yourself, or if you just like that extra friction while top rope belaying. And then you can always flip this thing around, so the climber strand comes out here, brake strand out here normally, and that's what the pictures they have there. You could always flip this around and then have the brake strand here and enjoy a little bit less friction. So those are pretty much all ATCs I give to clients and stuff. They don't really matter that much. I do have a few weirder tube style devices. Here are 2 of them. This thing I won in a competition actually. Like they were throwing gear out and I just happened to grab it. So this one's actually been with me for quite some time, like maybe since I was 13 years old. This one was used gear shop, like $3. And you can see they don't really make ATCs like this anymore where there's like a fatter side and a thinner side. And the idea with that is the thinner side provides just slightly less friction. The fatter side provides a bit more friction. At least it's, you know, what they market them as. And so you could use the fatter side for something like belaying, where you want a bit of extra friction, you know, in a lead setting or whatever. And then you have the thinner side for something like rappelling, when you want less friction. And yeah, they don't make ATCs like that anymore. I haven't really seen too many that are this shape around here. That was more of like a older style, like early 2000s style. This is an interesting looking one too. I'm not even sure what company made this. Wild Country. Oh, there it is, right there. This is made by Wild Country. You just had to look for the brand there. But yeah, so kind of interesting. If you wind up with one of these things, it may be worth kind of playing around with. I haven't really rappelled on these too much to actually feel a difference between rappelling and belaying. This thing is super small. I wonder if this is meant more for like, this device may work best with like twin ropes and stuff. And then those are all of my devices that aren't guide mode. The rest have a guide mode possibility. And so if we can work through some timelines here, one of the first guide style devices, or even possibly the first, was this Petzl. It was called the Reverso. So the most modern Petzl Reverso is this. This is the Reverso 4, I believe. I don't think they've come out with a 5 yet. This is the old Reverso. And I've met people that are a bit older than me that have like 9 of these things, because if you do continually rappel on this, these parts right here, which are the same places that I say is common for anywhere on any device, get super sharp. And actually in general, this device here, you know, has a number of sharp edges. And it also just makes a lot of noise when it's clanking around on a carabiner since it's fully metal. These wear out super fast, and for a while, since they were the only things that were made for this specific purpose, they were all you could buy. So older climbers have like a stack of these if they bothered to keep them after they wore out. I think I paid $5 for this as more of a collector's item, and I've used it a few times, but overall it makes too much noise. So it's just kind of a part of my collection. I kind of like it. And then moving along the same thing, I stole this one from somewhere. This is the exact same Petzl Reverso, only it's made for thin ropes. Here we go. Like you see it with comparison right there. Obviously fatter ropes and thinner ropes. They write this one's good for 8 mil and up for this. They don't give a full-on range. This one is 7.5 mil and up. So these are kind of your first models of devices that were made for belaying the follower off of the anchor and in a tube style device. So you can see how the design, overall design, hasn't really changed too much with that. On the other end of the spectrum, you have Black Diamond. Here's the first ATC I ever owned. This was some sort of gift from my parents, actually. And this is back when, we were using the Grigri 1 and everything. There weren't nearly as many devices on the market. But this was actually the first ATC I've ever owned. And you can see there's a little bit of wear on it, but I could actually still bring this out. I never use it. I'm terrified I'm going to lose it, actually. But there is a little bit of wear going on, but not much. So I could still bring this out and actually use it. These old Black Diamond ATCs lasted forever. And I got other models right here. I actually have, counting this one, I have 4 models of older Black Diamond ATCs. This one, I remember I found this one somewhere outside, and then it just became one of my devices. But you can see this is like one generation before. They had this big block of metal right here. Next generation, they decided to cut that metal piece out. And same deal. This one I could still bring out. Like this part right here takes forever to wear. So these ATCs could literally last a rock guide who's rock guiding 200 days a year. But it could last them like a few years for sure. This one I've been bringing out on my standard rock rack. It's exactly the same, only a little bit less used. This one was basically the same deal, but this one's as worn as I get with these ones. And this edge is pretty sharp right here. The teeth are very, very hollowed out. So this is probably the most used ATC I have. Final model of the BD ATC. This is the one that they currently make. And you can see they've done a few different things. They have a different circle right there. They have a more streamlined, smaller plate design like that. And it's lighter weight, of course, because that's what sells. With being lighter weight, they wear out faster. So this one is almost entirely worn out right here. And I maybe only got a year's worth of use out of this. So we've gone from a rock guide that works 200 days a year, being able to use one of these for like 3 or 4 years, down to a rock guide using this for half a season. If that, or like 1 year or half a season. Like I'm primarily an alpine guide. I don't beat up my ATCs as much as the rock guides. And I only ever got a year's worth out of these things. Yeah, lighter is maybe great because it's lighter, but it always wears out faster. That's kind of like the common thing. The Reversos have gone through sort of the same track. We have that Reverso 1 right there. For a while, they looked like this. This one was also given to me by a buddy who was just trying to clean out all of his gear before moving somewhere. So this is just kind of like the older model. If you go out and buy a Reverso from any store, it's going to look like this now. It's just kind of squared. I have this one just the way I like it. So it's actually one of my main belay devices that will be on one of my harnesses. And right now, there's not a whole lot of wear right there. So I'm kind of tracking the wear, seeing how many repels it takes. But it's a good device. It'll last you quite a while. Going back to Black Diamond ATCs real fast. So this is like the Main ATC, built for single ropes. They have the numbers on their website somewhere. They don't write them on the device. Here's the Black Diamond ATC guide. So that's for thinner ropes. There you go. You can see wider slots right there, thinner slots. I also want to take a moment here and say that the range of ropes that ATCs and other devices have printed on them by the manufacturers are often not, we couldn't say wrong, but often inaccurate. Like I've seen devices where they say rated to 11 mil ropes and the slots are so thin that you could barely fit, you know, a 10 mil rope in there. So it's like a lot of times when the devices say that they can fit this rope in, it's really just best in a certain range in between that. And the gree-grees illustrate this really well. So if I pick up a gree-gree right here, you'll see, and any of you guys who own a gree-gree can check this out for yourself, but you see how they have these stars right here with the maximum and the minimum range of ropes. So you can use that as a guide for any other belay device. If your ATC says it's good from 7.5 mil ropes all the way up to 10 mil ropes, I guarantee you it is not going to work well with a 7.5 rope or with a 10 mil rope. It will work well with something like 8 mil all the way up to 9.5 mil rope, but it's not going to be that great when you get to those extreme ends. A lot of people will argue like this device is better because it has a lot wider range of ropes, when in reality, if you like pick up the device itself and measure each slot, they're like exactly the same. Little disclaimer over, let's get back down. So yeah, if I have half or twin ropes, I'll use ATC Alpine guide. That's what it's called. And this is the one that I had for a long time. You can see the color difference. So this is the one that I actually use out there. Yeah, somehow I wound up with 3 of these things, but I only ever use one. So if I'm doing something like ski mountaineering or working with really thin 1.5 ropes and doing a lot of rappel work, then I'll bring this bad boy out. But yeah, it is really nice to have the thinner ATCs. You should have your belay device matched with the rope that you're using. Using a thin rope in a really wide device like this is just inappropriate. And there are little tricks you can do to make it work. But in the end, just like find a device, you know, like if you buy a rope, a device isn't that much extra to buy. I have other devices here that I've just been messing around with and just sort of feeling out because I want to just test out the different ATCs that are on the market and then sort of see what I like and don't like about them. And so let's start with the pivot. This device kind of deserves its own video, and its claim to fame is the fact that the guide loop here pivots. So it makes it a bit easier in some circumstances. I actually really like the width of the tubes there. The teeth are nice once you get them worn down. Even though DMM is a UK brand, and generally the UK brands make thinner devices because they use a lot of thin ropes there, this actually works really well with single ropes in America. I'd say up to like 9.4. And then same deal that I just ranted about here. The specs on it are for twin half ropes, 7.3 to 9.2, which I think would work just fine in that. And then single ropes are 8.7 up to 11 mil. There's no way you can fit an 11 mil in here comfortably and work with that. So just take that one with a grain of salt. Next thing, the Camp ATC version. And all these things have, you know, actual names. Like this is the DMM ATC, but it's called the Pivot. This is the Camp P or PIU with a little thing on the I. So I don't know how to pronounce that. Yeah, this is just a solid chunk of metal. So that's kind of nice. I did find that these channels are a bit thinner and more grabby. So they take a little bit more time to wear down with the rope to get that smooth. Right here, because of the design, this gets sharp pretty fast, but there's a ton of metal to wear out before it's fully retirable. So I think that's actually okay. The wire on it is also all over the place. It's like diagonal, which is kind of interesting. But other than that, I love how simple it is. It's just like your basic ATC guide mode. Has more friction than the other ones on the market when you're in guide mode, but yeah, it's overall like not a bad device to use while you're out there. Here's the Gravel Rhino horn. I have a whole video talking about this being reviewed, and it's funny, I've had this thing for so long and it looks like it's not used at all. So I think I need to keep working with this one and give it more time a day to really develop an opinion on it. But one thing that really just drives me away is this rhino horn part, which I really don't like. I think it doesn't really do the job that it's supposed to very well. But other than that, if you just chop that part off, it was a really nice looking belay device. Deserves more use on my part. And then here's one made by Mammut. This is the Eiger X, and I really like this one. This is a nice static piece. It kind of brings itself back to the original one right there. The hole is oriented 90 degrees. Some people have a lot of preference about this where it's like an AATC may come like this, or the clip hole is 90 degrees offset. I don't really care. It doesn't make a difference to me. I've actually used this a lot in the alpine, and I think for ice climbing, it's actually pretty nice. The interesting part about this is whereas a lot of these devices are aluminum, fully aluminum, like this right here is all aluminum, they added in a little bit of steel, or at least material that doesn't take as long to, or takes a lot longer to wear out. So right here in the teeth, that's more of like kind of steel. Right here in the back, that's more steel, and the rest is aluminum. So they did a lot of work to make this wear out, or take a lot longer to wear out, which I like. This is very similar to what Idelrid did with the Gigajoule. The only argument, or the thing I didn't like about the Gigajoule, is the teeth in the channels were a bit too aggressive. So that kind of caught on the rope an awful lot, especially when you're like rappelling with it. Whereas the Mammut one, they still have teeth there, but it's super minute. And it overall doesn't really affect the channel that much. So I like the fact that since I always want to wear the teeth down as fast as possible, here they're just so small, it doesn't really matter. So I don't get a lot of gripping with this as much as I do with this. And of course, all that depends on the rope that you choose. I got this device sometime like last summer, I think, and I used it for a lot of alpine guiding, and I actually like it a lot. Okay, so the final thing, I just got this, and I actually paid money for it. And this is the Wild Country ATC, whatever their name is. It's built just like your standard ATC. It's aluminum. It says 7.7 mil ropes up to 11, which I guarantee you that wouldn't work. Maybe the 7.7 mil would be okay, but definitely the 11 end. Just by looking at this device, with the way it's shaped and with how thin those wear points are, I would assume that this device wouldn't last me more than a year. And so that's going to be my new experiment, is I'm going to use this, I'm going to rappel with it, and alpine guide with it, and rock guide. And these teeth are going to wear down pretty fast for sure. And then I'm just assuming that with this, I may only get like 200 rappels, lowers, or whatever off of this device before it fully wears out. There you have it, guys. Another ultra long video where I talk about essentially nothing. But it's like these sort of deep dive videos that can help people with choosing their own belay device based on their rope systems that they're using, that I'm trying to go for here. As well as like other guides apparently watch my videos a lot, especially newer ones, and wanting to sort of them to see what you could, how deep you could kind of dive into these specific rope tools for your work. And it's like these things, may they sound trivial and stupid to someone who goes out and climbs once a week, but when you start adding in going out and doing a ton of rope tricks and work with these devices in order to keep your clients safe in the mountains or just out rock climbing, that's when these sort of details start to matter. And that's what I'm trying to demonstrate here, is how picking that good device for something can help you work better in your given setting. And this is just stuff that I've figured out throughout the years of what I've been doing. So trying to share some of that info and experience onto you guys. If you like the video, you can like, you can share. You can check out the description if you want to help support me, or check out my website, or hire me for a day of whatever. I don't like this big white wall, so I think I'm going to get a poster right here, help fill up the space a bit, because it's kind of a terrible wall for sure. So if you want to see whatever poster I put up right here, then stay tuned, and I'll see you guys in the next video. You're going to be a bumper in one of my YouTube videos now. Oh yeah.